The Women's College acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we are recording this podcast, the Turrbal and Jagera people of the Meanjin region. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are Australia's first storytellers, communities and creators of culture. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and the waters. Welcome to Voices of Influence, a podcast brought to you by the Women's College within the University of Queensland. I'm your host and producer, Tess Feller. Our episodes are designed to ignite inspiration and empower young adults. Tune in for engaging discussions with diverse professionals who share actionable insights to navigate early adulthood. Welcome to our 5th episode. Today, we're honoured to have Joanna Jenkins. Joanna is an esteemed Women's College alum who is a very successful author. Prior to her novelist career, she was one of the first female partners in the Brisbane office at Ashurst law firm and is continuing her legacy of leadership and influence as the current Deputy President of the Women's College Council. Join us as we explore Joanna's inspiring journey, where she's boldly defied gender stereotypes and navigated significant career shifts, all while shaping and strengthening her core values. Welcome, Joanna.
Thanks, Tess. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we continue, I'd like to ask you for a recommendation for our listeners. Is there something you've been reading, watching, or listening that you think others could benefit from?
One of the best books I've read in my life, actually, is A Woman of Berlin, which is about a journal written by a journalist. Actually, she's anonymous; she doesn't identify herself. Who survived the Russian invasion of Berlin at the end of the Second World War, and so it's her diary, day to day, of survival in a city which was populated by women. Small boys, because boys of 14 and above had been conscripted to go to the front, so and old men, and so it was a city full of women when the Russians came into the city, and their intentions were not benign. So she had to negotiate this very hostile environment in circumstances where there was no power, no water. Getting food was problematic, and all the time they were being preyed on by the Russian soldiers, and how she got through that. A fascinating book, and really quite confronting, but it sort of makes you understand how strong women are when they're confronted with these really difficult circumstances.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm definitely adding that to my book list. And then I suppose, would you like to tell us a little bit about where life has taken you professionally and personally since leaving the Women's College and graduating from university?
Right. Well, yeah, it was almost a kind of accidental career, really. So I graduated, I'm going to have to think of this, I had an arts degree and a law degree in 1987, and I got a job at a firm which is now Cause, but then was called Chambers, McNabb, Tully and Wilson. And I didn't know anything about law firms. I'd heard of one. And so I just asked my friends about which law firms I should apply to. They gave me a list. I sent out some applications. I didn't have a great degree. It was okay. It had got better as time went on, because in the 80s, well, certainly for me, studying wasn't a big priority to begin with, but became more of we can talk about that, more of a priority towards the end. Anyway, so I was offered, I got 2 job offers, and I thought, well, I didn't know anything about the firms, so I thought, okay, what am I going to base this on? And so one of the firms charged 20 cents for a tea bag when you were having morning tea. They charged 20 cents for a tea bag, and they only had staff drinks once a month. Whereas the other firm, you got the tea bags for nothing and a biscuit, a Monte Carlo biscuit, and there were drinks every Friday. And so I thought, I'll go with the one with the free tea bags and the drinks every Friday.
Yeah, good call.
I mean, it seems like a very silly way to choose a job, but in retrospect, I think it's actually quite good, because you think, what kind of people were they who'd charge their staff for a tea bag? And also understanding how important it is to relax on a Friday evening with your colleagues so that you can kind of debrief about the week and have a bit of fun is actually also incredibly important. So I actually made the right decision, actually for the right reasons, and it was a much better firm, probably as a consequence of those things. And so it was really only after I started working. So I had a grad position, which then was called Articles of Clerkship, but I had a grad position that went for 2 years. It was only then that I kind of realised how the law worked and how it all fitted together, and how, that client would come and deliver a problem, and you had to take the problem away and solve it using the tools in the arsenal. The kind of legal principles in the arsenal, and that was a revelation to me, and I found it really fun. I liked the people I worked with; they were great, and working hard, but also relaxing with colleagues at the end of the day. So that went well, probably much better than expected, and I stayed working there for about 8 years and ended up as a senior associate. In those days, there were female partners, or they were made partners after I got there, but they were really peers. So there was kind of like these great women who were maybe at most 5 years older than me, probably 3 or 4 years older than me. And so we all thought about having babies, the whole next phase, the having babies phase, was something that was all pretty new, negotiating what would happen, how that would look after, and there was no such thing as maternity leave. So I was the first person at Chambers McNabb Tully and Wilson in Brisbane to go part-time, and it was a complete disaster, partly because neither me nor the firm really knew how to handle it. How did that look? And clients didn't know how to handle it.
Uncharted waters.
Yeah. So I thought I did the logical thing and thought, I'll just open my own firm. How hard can it be? So I set up my own firm, and I think I must have been 31. Anyway, that went quite well. It was quite stressful, but it went quite well, and I had these, because I specialised in construction law, sort of big infrastructure projects, and I ended up acting for Sydney Airport, and when they were upgrading the airport for the 2000 Olympics, and Boral and BHP Steel, and these quite big clients, and then after, when I had 3 boys, and when the little one was 6 and going into grade 1, I thought, okay, it's time to go back into the city and the kind of the big world, and because I was it's a bit lonely being effectively, I had some staff, but effectively a sole operator where I was completely responsible for everything. So I went into to Blake's, which became Ashurst. Blake Dawson Waldron, and I was made a partner there after 18 months heading up a sort of infrastructure construction practice in Brisbane. And so I did that for 10 years, till the baby was finished school. Finished school.
Wow. So you were the sole operator of your own firm with 3 boys.
Yeah, but my office was in Toowong, so keeping the balls in the air was a little bit easier because I could just zip around between the school and home and the office. It was still tricky. I was going down to Sydney 2 days a week, but it was fun. It was good. Stressful, but good.
Yeah, wow. And then I suppose, what values would you say shaped your decisions to open your own firm, go part-time, and then go back to Ashurst? I guess that's professionally, but then also in your personal life?
I think part of the reason why I did all those things is because I probably there's this great word that used by George W. Bush when he was president, when he was talking about the axis of evil, and he said, our enemies misunderestimate us. And I just think it's a terrific word. I misunderestimated how difficult things would be, and then would kind of launch, so again, I'd think, oh, it can't be that hard, and I'd go and do it and think, it is, it always turned out to be trickier than it looked. So there was a bit of seeing an opportunity and going, okay, I'll do that without, I'll give that a crack. So always looking to see what was available, if there was an opening, and then moving sideways to do it. I kind of thought if I was going to be doing something, I worked really hard at it, but I always sought autonomy so that I could sort of be as much as possible in charge of the quality of my own work. So if I was going to be responsible for it, I actually wanted to be take responsibility for it and be responsible for it. I never burnt bridges, so I was always very conscious that if I was leaving something to go somewhere else, I'd always leave on good terms, work out the period of, if I had a 3-month or 6-month period, notice period, I'd always work that out. It's actually incredibly difficult, gritting your teeth and going in every day, but I made a conscious decision to not burn bridges and to not bag the place that I'd left, because there are always good things about where you've been. It just didn't suit me at the time. And I would always, and this is particularly of dealing with clients, I'd be lying awake at night worrying about, what was happening next on my files. And I'd always think, what is it in 6 months' time that I'll wish I said today? What is it that could happen to this client, what risks are happening at the moment that I wish I'd told the client about today and had the conversation with, even though it's going to be difficult to do that. So I tried to think of it in those terms, and then when you think, okay, well, I've got to tell this client that they might lose the case, or that that some bad thing's going to happen or could happen, then I'd gird my loins and go and have a conversation after planning it. Go and have a conversation with them about it, and then I was always very conscious that I wanted to have a reputation as an honest person who was reasonable and good to deal with. I don't know whether the people I dealt with, sometimes whether they agreed with that, but whether that was their perception. But that's sort of what I always strived to do, and to not do things that were, sometimes things as simple as you can lose your practicing certificate if you witness a document, witness a signature without the person actually signing it in front of you. And there were lots of times when a friend would say, oh, X has signed this document, my wife, your friend, has signed this document, can you just witness it for her because she's overseas? And I always say no, even though that was sometimes very difficult to do. I used to say, no, I'm not going to lose my practicing certificate for you, and then laugh, and they go, huh. And so I was always, I tried to work out what the right thing was, and then tried to stick by that even when it was difficult.
Yeah, well, doing the right thing isn't always easy,
no.
Especially when other people are involved and friends and colleagues and stuff like that. How would you say you got over, it's a bit of a spur of the moment question, but how would you say you got over doing, because you wanted to do the right thing, but what if people that were close to you were involved? How did you find you could do the right thing without compromising your relationships almost?
I would always explain why I was doing it and then make a joke about it,
Yeah, lighten the mood.
Try to lighten the mood, but be quite firm that I wasn't going to do that thing. And that there are always going to be people along the way who want to get you to play to their agenda, and it might not be the wrong thing. It just might be something that really is not going to get you anywhere and might put you in a bad light. And then so I always would be fairly firm about saying no.
And then I suppose that also ties into your core values of honesty and wanting to do the right thing, but that's also the right thing by people, by yourself, by the law, etc. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So do you think that your values have stayed the same over the course of your career and, your personal life, or have they differed and changed?
Those core principles haven't changed. I think I learnt as time went on to trust my gut a bit more and to realise that the gut instinct that I had, I hadn't actually changed. The gut instinct that I had when I was younger was, which I eventually followed, was what was the right thing to do. But as I got older, I kind of trusted it a bit more and didn't I still second guess myself, but tried not to second guess myself as much. I wish I'd been calmer, it took me a long time to realise that sort of cliche, keep calm and carry on, that being calm is actually sometimes quite difficult to be, but really important, because it keeps it in times of stress. It means that your thoughts and the decisions that you make are much more sort of rational and reasoned. And I learnt over that period how to be calmer, just by actually concentrate on being physically calm, like slowing down speech, which I'm doing now, slowing down speech, slowing down movement, not making sudden movements. It's amazing how infectious it can be if you're in a room with somebody who's sort of, their arms are darting all over the place, their voice speeds up, how calming it is for everybody if they kind of slow it down and lower it. It took me a long time to realise that that's not just appearances, that's actually incredibly important. And being kind, I think, it's always the right decision to be kind to people.
Yep, I couldn't agree with that more. And I guess I kind of want to ask you, through these learnings of learning to be calm, be kind, stay true to yourself, follow your core values, you've defied gender stereotypes in being one of the first female partners in the Brisbane Ashurst law firm. What challenges did you face along the way? That's a massive question to ask you, but I suppose looking back, some of the core challenges that you overcame and now look back saying, I know to be calm, I know to be kind, etc.
It always used to astonish me the low expectations they had, sometimes the people I worked with had of me, the things that they thought I couldn't do because I was female or had children. It used to really blow my mind sometimes. It was infuriating, but that they would think that somehow or other you were you had some kind of intellectual incapacity because of your gender or because of the fact that you had a 2-year-old at home. I used to say to my husband that, because I was quite often, even in my client work, I was quite often in the early days the only woman in a meeting, and the youngest person in a meeting. If I was working on a big construction project, and I used to come home to my husband and say I didn't understand what was going on in the room. There seemed to be this sort of dynamic, this sort of power play going on. I didn't really understand what it was, and he'd say to me, "Oh, there's nothing going on. What you see is what you get." And I actually think that it's probably less true now that there are more women in the workplace, but there was a different kind of level of communication going on, and it had something to do with power and who was the powerful man in the room and how that power was exercised. And I found it difficult to read it, so I used to spend a lot of time sort of puzzling over what was going on. And I'm not sure I ever worked it out, which is why I wrote a book about it, about how you're sitting in a meeting and there'd be a conversation going on in the meeting that the woman who was sitting in the meeting would sometimes be excluded from. If they'd go around the room where everybody would say what they were doing that week, and they'd kind of jump over the woman as if she wasn't there. Like, sometimes I felt like I wasn't actually in the room. So, and then sometimes they'd say these incredibly, sexist remarks, and all have a little chortle about it. And so I used to get my pen out, red pen, and my notebook, and I'd say, "Could you just repeat that? I'm just writing that down in case I want to sue you." And they go, "Ooh."
There you go. So you're joining in, but not like you're joining in on the joke, but it's like
but they'd stop there because it was just calling them out on it, but not making them think I actually was going to sue them. Although I suspect sometimes they wondered. But then I wrote a book about it, and they realised what the notebook was for.
There you go. Wow. How do you think the trajectory of women in the workplace has changed since then?
It's changed a lot, just through power of numbers. So I think in the Brisbane office now, last I heard, it's about half in the partnership of women to men.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I was talking to this lovely man who was the managing partner for a long time, and because I went to the office to be interviewed about the book, and I said to him afterwards, "Do you think that it's changed a lot? The culture in those meetings has changed a lot?" And he said, "Oh yeah, no question, and it's for the better." So even though he was, I wouldn't say he wasn't resistant to women, but I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I think he was kind of pleasantly surprised how the conversation became it differed, and it sort of becomes purposeful in a different way, so that this power dynamic was diluted.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think young women, even though the conversation has shifted a lot since your experience, how would you what would you say to young women who are finding that they are still missing parts of these conversations and are being jumped over a little bit, and it's a bit of a boys' club, and they're not really sure how they can get in there and have their voice heard?
I had a coach once, one of those kind of coach people who was just fantastic. She'd been a voice coach at NIDA, so she kind of focused on how you are in a room, like how you're present in a room. And she used to say to me, she was the one who said, slow down your movements, slow down your voice, always talk in the first couple of minutes of a meeting, because so that people realise that you're there. Because don't remain silent for 20 minutes, because by that time it's easy to dismiss your voice completely. Yeah, these things that I would have thought were hocus pocus until I tried them out. Choose where you're going to sit around the table, somewhere in the middle. Don't sit out on the corner. Don't hide in the corner. Just sit somewhere in the middle, not in an aggressive way. Don't sit necessarily at the head of the table unless you're chairing the meeting, but sit somewhere in the middle. Be calm and centre yourself. Don't sort of don't sort of lean, put your body over to one side and square your shoulders. All of this stuff that I would have dismissed completely, but it's actually very powerful, surprisingly.
Yeah, wow. So even like just the little body positioning and
be
physical
present
positioning
in the room and take your place in the room, both with your body and your voice.
Yeah, and I suppose remember that you do have a voice and everyone deserves to hear it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a common thing that women talk about is how they'll say something in a meeting and everybody ignores it, and then 30 seconds later a man will say it and everybody goes, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that. That happens a lot. And I don't think, it probably doesn't help to, you have to be careful about actually openly calling it out in an aggressive way, but you can call it out by making a joke of it, or just by making sure your voice is heard and you're speaking in a slow and forceful but not aggressive way so that they listen to you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you think that your motivations for moving from a career as a partner in a law firm to an author where you've written about your experiences in the law firm were motivated by the relationships you had and the experiences, or how would you say, why did I become a writer? Yeah.
Because that's what I always wanted to be. So being a partner in a law firm, for decades was actually a diversion. So that's what what happened was I had this terrible bike accident where I was hit by a guy who was driving a Land Cruiser. His name was Freckle. It was a bottle green Land Cruiser, and he hit me. He T-boned me, and I was very injured for a year. I had this very broken arm, and I was trying to work during that time. And then eventually had a bone graft, and it got better. But it made me realise a few things. One, if I was going to go and do the thing I wanted to be when I grew up, I think I was 50 or more than 50. It was kind of time to do that. And also, everybody's very stressed in that environment. It's a very stressful working environment, and I was in a pretty vulnerable place health-wise, and I couldn't cut up my duck at partners' lunches. It's terrible. And I don't think they realised how. I mean, I was probably trying to cover it up, but I don't think they realised how badly injured I was and how sick I was. And anyway, so I thought, right, well, it's time to move on. So I did.
Wow. There you go. And this obviously aligns with your values, because you, at your core, want to do the right thing, and that right thing was for you to move on?
Well, it was the right thing for me, and I knew that I'd got to the point where I just couldn't. I wasn't able to give it my best anymore, because I'd got to the end of the piece of string and just couldn't. I didn't want to do it anymore. And once I got to that thing, I think some people sometimes stay in the job after they've kind of checked out mentally. I couldn't do that. So, and besides, I couldn't have that job, which was quite absorbing, and write a book at the same time. I didn't have the time or headspace to do that. So I went cold turkey and started writing a book. again, I thought, how hard can it be? You know, you just write 90,000 words, you send it off and someone will publish it. It's not.
Not that easy.
It's not that easy.
Something that my auntie said to me this year, actually, that really resonated with me was she just got a new job, and I said, how did you know that like, are you going to miss your old job? How did you know that was the right step for you to move on and get something else in a different space? And she said there were young or not even young, there were new people coming into the business who were so excited and wanted to make so much change, and I would kind of look at them and be like, I'm so tired, like this is great that you want to make change, but I almost can't help facilitate it anymore because I feel like I've given everything I can and there's nothing left. And I just think that really resonated because I think it's so true that sometimes you just get to the end of your piece of string and you think, I can't actually give where I am this space in life anymore. And I think, almost did that happen? It's time to hand it over to the people that can create change because they have the energy to.
Yeah, the enthusiasm. And one of the great things about those big law firms, you know, that like there's a lot of bad things about them. They're very stressful. It's very competitive. You're competing with the person in the office next door. But one of the great things about it is the young people coming through, and there was always a big focus on making sure that they work hard but also have a good time while they're there and build up connections with colleagues, and because they're the things that are going to be important for their career. And that enthusiasm, that renewal, that sense of renewal, and that sense that you're just a custodian for a short time, because then it's going to be passed on to this new generation who are going to take the recipe and make it better. It's really exciting and invigorating, and it also, that's right. I mean, you can hand it over to them feeling confident that it's going to be a better place.
I wonder, what would you say to people maybe in like the studying context, because most of our listeners are at uni still and aren't in the workforce. What would you say if people aren't passionate about what they're studying? Do you think that, do they stick it out and find passion later in their career and make it their own, or do they stick it out? What would you say?
Well, studying is a pathway to doing something else. If you can't see that the course that you're doing is on the path to the something else, now it doesn't have to be specific, it can be in my example, I liked the idea of words and problem solving, which is what law is about, and so I could see that it would provide a pathway to that. If you don't see studying is at times boring and stressful, so you don't have to be passionate every day when you get up looking at the page. And sometimes things that you find boring now, you might find interesting later. I used to think legal history was the most boring thing I'd ever heard of, but now I find it fascinating. But I think if you look upon it as a Lego piece that's going to be a building block, if you can't see that it's going to play a role in where you want to be, not specifically, but a sort of general idea about where you think you would like to go, then change courses while you can.
Yeah, change at the early mark rather than later on.
Follow your gut.
Yeah, it's so hard to do, following your gut.
Yeah, it is. And I met a few people over my career who did the course their parents wanted them to do. Never goes well.
No, never. I've never heard a success story from doing something that other people wanted you to do, which I think is hard. Like, because you kind of have to remember that people in your life almost have their own agenda a little bit sometimes. So that's why listening to yourself is so important. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're really inspiring because you, just full stop, but also because you really have seemed to see what you wanted and almost shape a career out of that?
Yeah, it was much more organic than that.
Yeah.
It was more about going, oh, there's a space over there that I could fill that looks kind of like a challenge. I'll go and do that.
Yeah, okay. So would you say that for listeners who are really like, maybe I don't want to just be a lawyer or I don't want to just be a nurse, how is it you just have to take the opportunities as they come to shape your own career?
Yeah, and as well, as opportunity, and you can make opportunities too by pointing yourself in the right direction. So in writers, there are two kinds of writers, they say, a planner and a pantser. So a planner is a person who meticulously plans every chapter and every element of the story before they sit down and start to write. A pantser is someone who sits down at the computer and just starts pumping out a story. I'm a pantser. I'm trying to be a planner, but I'm a pantser, and sometimes I think it possibly means that it takes me longer to get there, because it's a bit like peeling away all the guff and chucking a lot away before you come to what the core part of the story was. And at the beginning, I didn't really know what the core part of what the story was about. Having said that, though, it's actually not. I don't think life's not about the destination. It's about the journey and how much you, how you negotiate that journey and point yourself in the right direction. And I've been pretty lucky. In fact, I've been very lucky. I've been in the right place at the right time a lot. But if you kind of look out all the time for opportunities as they arise and then step into them, then that's what I did. I mean, it might not be right for everybody, but it was very pantser, like, go.
I really like that word. Pantser, I've never heard it before.
I think life's about forming meaningful relationships.
And it's interesting because even though all of the episodes I've done with various guests have been thematically very different, every single one of them have come back to the core of, it's like the people you surround yourself with that have such an impact on your life, and connection is so important. And I just wanted to reiterate that the people you surround yourself with has such impact.
Does
on your life.
And on the lives of others.
Absolutely. And then finally, I would like to ask you who the most influential woman is in your life.
Well, see, I found this. I think this is a really tricky question, because
it is a very
and I was trying to work out why it's so tricky for me, and thought, is it because But then I thought, when we were starting out, the word mentor, well, it existed, but not in the sense of the sort of formal sense that it's used today. And there were I didn't know any female lawyers. I didn't, none. And the most influential women in my life are my friends, really. If I was married to a woman, it would be the person I was married to. If I'd had any daughters, it would be a daughter, but I'm married to a man, and I have 3 sons. But it's really the friends I have, because we kind of worked it out together. We were making it up as we went along, and we kind of worked it out together and did it in different ways. We kind of had various levels of success in various things. And the other influential women in my life are all the writers, the female writers that I read when I was a kid, because I just spent my childhood reading fiction. And so, George Eliot, Jane Austen, and then the ones, Agatha Christie, this person called Helen McInnes, who used to write the most excellent spy novels. That I think that had the Brontes. I think that had a huge impact on what I thought was possible. Because growing up in a farm in Childers, where none of the other girls even wanted to go to university. I was thought to be a bit peculiar. We kind of had to make it up. It's been a glorious ride. But, I'd say my friends.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Joanna, for this wonderful chat. I've learnt a lot, and I'm sure that all of our listeners will too. So,
thank you. Thanks for having me, Tess.